Hey everyone, it's Adios Amigo, and I'm bringing you the review of the JVC HA RX700. This has probably been one of the longest in the making just because I kind of wanted to confirm how I felt about it. When these first showed up, they actually arrived simultaneously with the HA RX500, and so I put the 500 on first. And I have to admit that my initial impression of the 500s were very negative. The 700s I put on after, and I kind of had to brace myself for it. My expectations were very low, and I ended up loving them. So I kind of wanted to use them over time to make sure that that love wasn't just me expecting the worst from the 500s, and then sort of feeling like because they were better than the 500s that made them good when maybe comparatively they weren't. But no, they are actually that good. You'll see a lot of differences going from the 500 to the 700. The build quality is superb, the size is larger, the comfort is better, everything just feels higher quality. And it has a lot of the same design cues without a lot of the same design flaws. So we'll get into it. For price, I paid, I think, around 50 bucks for these. These were on sale actually on Amazon for about $35-ish, which for me is a steal. I mean, an absolute steal. Even at 50 and like 47, whatever price you can get them for, depending on what sales are available in your area. These are fantastic. I think, honestly, if I had paid over $150 for these, I still would have been happy. I would have felt like I was getting my money's worth at least. At 50 and under, I feel like they're a steal. That said, it's going to depend on what you're using them for. So your intended use is gonna be very similar to the HA RX500. They have the same fixed cable design, and they also have the same very long cable, as you can see coiled up down here at the bottom. The pads use a similar material as the HA RX500s. Now the foam underneath does feel a little better, but the cover material is still very similar. It's still plastic, but the plastic feels better made, more solid. The joints feel more solid. It's not entirely plastic. You actually have the metal guide rod here for the adjustments. The headband feels much more sturdy. It uses a suspension system with mesh cloth and some kind of foam padding in there. And you also have the main rod up here that kind of holds everything together. Now, in terms of build quality and intended use has to be desktop. They are efficient enough to run off of mobile devices. I had to push it pretty hard, but I could get these to run on my Sony NWA 45B. Now, the NWA 45B has about 35 watts a channel, and out of a power setting of 0 to 120, I don't know why Sony uses that range, out of 0 to 120, it took 100 to get these to listenable volume, but they did work. So you can drive these off of mobile devices if you want. That might be more applicable, let's say, if you're trying to, hook these up to like a Switch or a Nintendo DS or a video game controller. Then it might be possible to do those things, and the long cable might still not be an issue for those things. So it can be powered off of regular devices. You don't have to hook it up to a headphone amp. That said, I did run these off of the Shit Magni Heresy for most of the testing, and I just found them superb. But anyway, so these are a full over-ear headphone. They are larger than the HA RX500. The pads are much more comfortable. They have an angled shape to them. I don't know if that comes through here on the video, but there's just a slight angle on the pads. And I was initially very kind of off-put by the design. The pads are quite shallow. I don't know if that'll come through or not, but it basically only gets to like half of one finger in depth. Like one joint, not even that, maybe a third. It's very, very shallow, and your ears will probably touch the side here. I can just about guarantee it. Now, for me, that's not a huge comfort issue. For some of you, it may be. Just something to be aware of. But I was able to wear these for hours and hours with no problem whatsoever. They're super comfortable. I didn't really have issues with ear heating. I never had issues with the headphone feeling kind of jank in my hand or on my head. They're very solidly built. I love these things. They're incredible. Modularity-wise, these pads can be changed out, but I don't see much need to personally. You could throw on other pads if you want. I never really tried it, but they come off easily enough and they go on easily enough. I mean, they're basically just held on by lip, and then they just come right off. So you can definitely change those pads if you want something deeper. I just don't feel the need, especially at this price point, because good Lord. But yeah, that's about the only thing you can really, as far as I know, mod. The cable is attached, so you can't change the cable. I don't know if this company is large enough for third-party manufacturers to make other things for it. The suspension system does seem kind of unique. It's basically this kind of rod over here that connects through the yoke, and then the cloth basically just slots through right here. The rod slots through the cloth suspension. It's pretty simple. It's definitely possible to make aftermarket parts if you wanted, but I just don't. If it's so, it works so well out of the box. I just don't need it. As you can see, it's ratcheting for the vertical adjustments. There is a little bit of, actually there's quite a bit of vertical play and side-to-side play, which is great. It should fit most head types relatively comfortably. These are surprisingly well designed for the price. Now, as for how they sound, I don't know if I go over this regularly, but my preferred tonal balance is warm of neutral. I like to have forward vocals. I like to have a larger soundstage. I don't need, in fact, I prefer not to have a ton of bass emphasis as long as I can get bass extension. These do a surprisingly good job of those things. I especially don't like having a very overly strident treble, generally speaking. Sometimes I can enjoy it depending on the headphone. These do a great job of taming even recordings that are supposed to have a really strong treble. Kind of tame it down and make it more enjoyable for me. It adds that syrupy quality, that kind of smooth, warm tone to female vocals. Male vocals sound good, but not as good as female. Male vocals become a tiny bit recessed, but surprisingly, it does have this kind of U-shaped, warm tonal balance in a closed-back headphone, which is pretty unusual in this price category. Normally, you expect them to go like straight bass cannon. These don't do that, which is fantastic. Now, when I first opened these up, there was a little pressure on the bottom of the ear, much like the Koss. But unlike the Koss, when these wore in over time, I no longer had that problem with these headphones. The bass does have presence in this, by the way, going back to sound, but it's better controlled. It's actually relatively tight and not overwhelming. The sound generally, it's almost kind of like it's going towards the LCD2C sound signature, but without the weird dips and spikes in the mid-range and treble. It just tapers off in the treble, which can be kind of a problem. Not to say that there isn't detail in these. They're surprisingly detailed for the warm signature. Also, I want to point out they're warm, but they're not too warm. They're not veiled. They don't sound muddy. There's no it's hard to explain. But it's a very full sound without being fatiguing. Now, the imaging is solid on these. I was able to use these in gaming. And, I mean, lately I've been putting more time into, like, Final Fantasy XIV. But I do hop on to Escape from Tarkov and Siege with some friends every once in a while. And these are able to handle that competently. Better so than, I think, than any of the 25 and under headphones that I had reviewed, and probably better than anything in the $100 and under, or it'll be competing at least in that category for tops in that regard. Now, the one issue that I sort of have with these, I came to a Carrie Underwood song. I think the title was What I Never Knew I Always Wanted, and for whatever reason, on the album that the song comes from, her upper mid-range and treble is really sharp. I found that across multiple headphones. And these try to reproduce that upper mid-range and treble peak in the recording. And I just don't think they have the dynamic range to get there. So I heard a tiny bit of distortion in the treble. Now, this might also be because at the same time she's singing those parts, there's also a relatively, it's not like a digital synth bass where it's like artificially deep, but it's a relatively deep kick bass. And yeah, there was distortion. I never heard it on any other recording except for that one. And it might just be the recording. I don't know. I'll have to go back to it and check with other headphones, but typically, these were just entirely too enjoyable for almost everything I listened to. That one song is the exception. And in terms of isolation, because it is a closed back, some people may be wanting these specifically for the purpose of preventing other people from hearing what they're listening or bothering other people with their music, that kind of thing. They're trying to isolate the world. So with these, I got, I believe, one of the best, not quite the best, but one of the best isolating performances. So 5 feet away, I could hear these without much problem. 20 feet away, barely. I could barely hear them away, I think in the next room, 10 feet, basically there's, imagine you have a kitchen and there's a door up here in the corner on a wall that separates them. 10 feet away, I could hear it. I could still hear the music coming through. In a completely quiet house, I could hear it. But when I went, basically, if this is the kitchen, there's a straight shot 20 feet away. No, I couldn't hear it, which is surprisingly quite good. Now, there are a few other headphones I have that will just completely trounce that result. But for non-studio monitor headphones, that was one of the best results. So they will do a decent job of isolating. Now, if you're in a completely quiet environment, other people will still hear you if they're even relatively close. But if they're in another room or something, the odds are they probably won't. But yeah, for under 50, these are going to be my favorite, 100%. For under $100, they're probably going to be up. They're going to be a contender for favorite. And even among headphones that are $200 and under, depending on what you're using them for, I think these would still be one of my top recommendations for a headphone under $200. These things just blew me away. And I actually kind of had to pull myself away from using them because I got so comfortable listening to these. And then I went back to other headphones and I had to remind myself, you're not limited to this. This was just for a review. But they sound so impressive for the price that I almost didn't mind not listening to more expensive headphones, which is incredible because if I'm going to be honest, I do have access to quite a few more expensive options in my collection that are very enjoyable for me. And that includes electrostats, that includes planar magnetics, that includes some more expensive dynamic driver headphones. And the tonal balance and the comfort of these are just so well balanced, so well thought out, that I didn't feel like I was missing out. Now, I have to admit that when I went back to the higher end headphones, I thought, okay, I am missing out on something. But this was, the RX700s were so good, they convinced me I wasn't missing out for something, on anything, until I actually went back and listened to the other headphones. And getting myself to do that was more of a chore than I've ever expected. So these come with my highest level of recommendation, especially for anyone who's just getting started with headphones. I know that the budget may be a very tight fit for some people where they cannot go the extra $20 or $30 to go from 25 to 50 bucks. But I highly recommend that if you can swing it, save up for these. If they fit the way that you want to use your headphones, they will be a fantastic way to get started in higher quality listening, I guess. Now, that comes with the caveat that this is tuned to my specific preference. If you prefer brighter headphones, or if you want more of a V curve, if you want overwhelming bass, or if you want like a detail monster, these are not the headphone for you. This is more what my personal preference is for sound. I'm not putting these on a measuring device and letting you know that, you know, here's how they measure. On my ears, on my head, to my own, you know, I don't know how messed up hearing, these sound fantastic for the price, and I could not recommend these enough. But that about wraps it up. If I had a gold, you know, a winner award to give to these different headphones, this would definitely be the one I give, under $100 certainly. And yeah, I mean, if you're in the market for headphones and you want to give something a try, I highly recommend these JVCs. The fact that they made these and there is so little discussion about these headphones is almost like, I feel like I need to proselytize for these headphones. I need to advocate for them so we can get more from JVC. We need more from this company, because a higher end version of this RX700 would be something I absolutely jump on with no questions asked. I just want a higher end version of these. As an entry level, they're fantastic. Now, give me a little something more, JVC. Just give me something more. I want more. And I think if we want more, we need more people buying the 700s. We need to let them know that we like these headphones. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, I'm Adios Amigo. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be moving on to the AKG K92 next week. So I'm kind of simplifying the workflow production, by the way, on this. This isn't going to be as edited as a lot of my videos. And I'm also trying to go with audio through the camera, using like a mic into the camera as opposed to a discrete audio interface and a powered condenser mic. So if you're having thoughts on that change in production process, let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.